On this vote, the ayes are 50, the nays are 48. The nomination of Brett M. Kavanaugh of Maryland to be an Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States is confirmed.
U.S. Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh was sworn into office earlier this month. But for Kavanaugh, the road to a lifetime appointment on the highest court of the land was more difficult than expected.
I am here today not because I want to be. I am terrified. I am here because I believe it is my civic duty to tell you what happened to me while Brett Kavanaugh and I were in high school.
Proceedings were derailed by allegations of sexual assault by Dr. Christine Blasey Ford, who went to high school with Kavanaugh. Ford's testimony ignited a political firestorm.
This whole 2-week effort has been a calculated and orchestrated political hit. This is a circus.
The televised hearings captured the attention of a nation. According to Nielsen data, roughly 20.4 million people tuned in to watch. And those numbers don't account for the millions more who streamed the hearings live. Fresno legal assistant Cassandra Rivera was watching.
I was at work, really. We would watch it on and off online. Snapchat even had it live and everything, so we'd switch between like our phones or the computer while also trying to get work done.
President Trump published a tweet shortly after the testimonies. In it, he questioned why Ford didn't report the assault when it happened. This triggered a wave of personal stories trending on social media under the hashtag #WhyIDidn'tReport. Rivera used the hashtag to share her story.
I was very young, and it was people that were supposed to be very close to me. Someone that was supposed to be like a grandpa figure, and then someone that was the man that helped to baptize me when I was younger too. With like my tweet, when I brought it up to someone, their response to me was, well, maybe he was drunk, like if that was an okay excuse for it. And so then I just never really brought it up to anyone again.
The excuse of being drunk. Rivera says this comment was all it took to prevent her from telling anyone about the abuse for several years.
When you're younger, you kind of don't really always feel heard. Years later, I blocked it out for a lot of my childhood after it stopped. But then when it all kind of just like came rushing back when I was a teen in high school.
It affected her emotionally and physically.
A lot of the times people don't understand that self-harm is more of a just physical release that you can't get emotionally. I finally opened up to my mom about it. It's still always hard.
The fact that she talked about it later is not unusual, right?
Dr. Catherine Forbes is a women's studies professor at Fresno State.
It's the survivor's experience. The survivor gets to make a choice about how it gets used. If he or she wants to come forward with it.
Forbes knows firsthand. 3 months before she met her husband, another man sexually assaulted her.
I remember the man's face. I remember I was at a party with him. He was part of this white elite group as well. He was in a fraternity. I was in a sorority. I remember everything about it. I'm 51. I told my husband about it last week for the first time. So it's not unusual. It's not unusual. And I'm a women's studies professor. I'm a feminist, and I teach about assault, and I did the same thing.
Forbes says survivors often weigh the cost and benefits of reporting. And this can be especially difficult when the assault occurs at a young age.
You see, there's a multitude of reasons, but there are certainly some patterns. One of the things that's really important to teenagers are relationships with their peers. And the vast majority, the overwhelming majority of sexual assaults is perpetrated by somebody you know. So reporting means disrupting that relationship. If you're a teenager, you have to tell your parents. You have to tell your parents that you were drinking. You have to tell your parents, all kinds of things that may be related.
And speaking out doesn't always mean being heard.
What we see in the hearings is that women's testimony doesn't get counted as evidence.
To many survivors, Kavanaugh's confirmation was a wake-up call, shedding light on the way sexual assault cases are handled, not just in a public and highly politicized setting, but on a personal level as well.
I feel that it helps keep that defense strong of the, well, boys will be boys. It shows them that they can do what they want and still get away with it. Like, they won't necessarily be held accountable for it.
Now, the flip side to any political movement is that there's always the chance for a counter movement.
Dr. Wes Wise teaches mass communication and public relations at Fresno State. Wise says he doubts that Ford's testimony was ever a threat to Kavanaugh's confirmation.
I think that their minds were already made up prior to the testimony, and I think it was designed in a way to gauge public opinion or affect public opinion.
There is plenty of public opinion. The hashtag Why I Didn't Report reached millions of people on all social media platforms. And Wise says hashtags can make a difference.
Any political movement large enough to affect how millions of people may decide on an issue, especially at the ballot box, can definitely affect change.
Wise believes that lasting change won't come from political leaders.
It's important to remember that it isn't just a top-down process. It's almost important to think of this as a bottom-up process, and that if you believe what former Speaker of the House Tip O'Neill said years ago, that all politics is local.
There are signs that the Why I Didn't Report hashtag has influenced local change. In the 4 days between Ford's testimony and Kavanaugh's confirmation, RAIN, an anti-sexual violence organization, reported a 338% increase in the number of calls coming into their national sexual assault hotline. While these signs are promising, Wise says the true test comes when the cameras are turned off.
The problem is these kinds of movements can generate a lot of interest in a very short period of time, but they're difficult to maintain because you're talking about a lot of emotional energy.
Wise says learning to choose your battles and taking care of yourself and those around you is the key to maintaining a movement's power.
So when I say pick and choose your battles, what I mean is not that some issues are inherently more important than others, but fight in a way that's going to allow you to stay in that fight in the long term, because it is easy to burn yourself out.
Rivera says sometimes change starts with a simple tweet.
I feel like when you speak up about it and other people around you realize that it happened to someone close to them, then it kind of makes them understand it's a lot more common than they would imagine.
Whatever stories they tell or experiences they share, for survivors, the fight has just begun.
Keep fighting, because you will be strong, and all you can do is keep moving forward and keep pushing.